Hola y bienvenidos al podcast Un gato en tierra de perros, vuestra referencia para la política estadounidense, la cultura y mucho más. Hello, I'm Joe Magaha. Thank you, friends, for being with me for another episode of Un Gato en Tierra de Perros. Today I have with me Mr. Hernando Arce. Welcome, Hernando.
Yes, hello, Joe. Thank you for having me on your show.
My pleasure. Thanks for being here. I've been watching your videos on Instagram and X, and I see that you've been following what's been going on with the immigrants. You know, millions of immigrants arrived over the Biden administration, and now the borders more or less closed. But I guess the question is what to do now. What brought you to this? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, originally I'm from New York City, and that's where I was born and raised. My parents are from Colombia. They arrived in 1965 with the big push from Caribbean and South American migrants, legal migrants, by the way. So what I noticed starting back in during the Obama days, when their first caravans started coming up north from Mexico of illegals, that's when the caravans really started during the Obama administration. I noticed my neighborhood got inundated by illegal aliens. And I don't call them undocumented or migrants. They're illegal aliens, what they are. And to the point where I didn't even recognize my neighborhood, Joe.
What's your neighborhood? Was it?
It was Jackson Heights, Queens, New York City,
Okay. Yeah.
which is a mecca for illegals in New York City. So to the point where I had to leave as a political refugee, New York State, and move to Texas, where my little sister lives here in San Antonio, Texas, and thinking I was going to Texas, come and take it, don't tread on me kind of attitude, just to find out that during the Biden regime, millions of illegals came through my city, and so I had to pick up my iPhone, and start recording what I was witnessing, Joe.
Interesting. Yeah. It's a wild time, and I have mixed feelings about it because I do have friends, of course, that are undocumented or illegal. But I also have you know, concern for our economy and for our safety. I've always kind of thought about, the fact that I don't like that borders restrict us from traveling, because it seems to be something that only affects the poor. The rich can go wherever they want and they don't have to worry about it. They don't even have to worry about passports or anything. But
Mhm.
crime and also other issues like just, there's not enough jobs in the places that everybody goes. Like right now, there's not enough jobs to go around for the native born people here. So how do you see it going in terms of sending some people back, and in terms of how ICE is handling things?
That's a great question. So to answer that, you really have to put things and go back in time and put things into perspective. Before the big rush of these migrants during the Biden regime, the government always said for the last 20 years back that we had 11 million illegals. Remember that? 11 million, 11 million. They were touting that number for decades. My opinion, that number was probably double. So we had already 20 million undocumented workers, as you like to call them, here in America before the big push of an additional 20 million. So right now, I mean, you could say that there's arguments that there were 40 to 45 million of these people living in our country, and they're not living in the shadows. They're out in the open, as we see now with ICE doing their enforcement and removal operations, ERO. So the way I see it, to answer your question, how is this going to go down? Because what we're witnessing now is historic. We've never seen in the streets that these ICE officers, and it's really a multitask with the marshals, ATF, Custom Border Patrol is now out in the interior because the border is secure now, that they push these agents into the interior. The way I see it breaking down, and this is coming from boots on the ground, guerrilla style journalism, like is what I do. I see it 30, 30, 30. I see 30% are going to self-deport, in the next few years. And this is going to be a 5, 10 year campaign to get them all out. It's not going to happen overnight. And then another 30%, we're going to have to go and find them at their workplace, or at their home, or at the Home Depot, as I call it, not Home Depot, Home Depot. And then the last 30%, Joe, we're never going to be able to remove them from the country, because they're going to get lawyered up with lawyers, thousands of dollars to pay for those lawyers. They're going to pop out one or two anchor babies. Uh, and by the way, those children qualify for Medicaid, which is why the government is shut down right now, because we have over 3 million of these babies in our country now. Besides DACA, DACA is a different story. Uh, and so they're going to lawyer up. They're going to have children. They're going to have no violent criminal record to say of. They're going to have work permits and they're going to show that within the last 8 to 10 years, because that's how long you can move the process with immigration courts. You could prolong it to 10 years. They're going to, at the end, ask for a cancellation of removal, which is very common. And then they'll have their removal canceled, and they'll be able to stay here and get a green card and a residency, and then eventually maybe even citizenship. Joe.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. It's I never really understand how the process works. It sounds very complicated. Even people that I know who've immigrated legally, there are so many different hoops to jump through. You have to go back for a while. You have to basically do all these different things to meet the standards, which is difficult. But everybody. I mean, a lot of people want to be here. I think also an important part of it is that people before, when they would move here, they would want to integrate and become part of our society and become Americans. And I feel bad for friends of mine who are of Italian heritage and don't speak Italian. I even know a lot of people, well, here in California they call them pochos, Mexican Americans that don't speak Spanish.
Mm.
And I used to bust their chops a lot because I speak Spanish, and you look at me, I'm Irish, but I was born in Spain, so I had an advantage, but I even have relatives that are Mexican that don't speak Spanish. And in a way, it's understandable, because back in the 50s and 60s, it was really not looked on as good to speak another language. People would get, basically, you wanted to fit in and you wanted to become a part of America, so people wouldn't speak their language to their kids because they wanted them to learn English. How do you feel about that? We're a multicultural country, but do you think that the people that are coming here want to be Americans, or do they just want to take the
Mm.
money and then go home or send it home?
Well, that's a good question, Joe. I mean, if you look historically, go back 100 years when we had the Irish and when we had the Italians come in during the first immigration rush into the country. The difference is, Joe, is that we didn't have a welfare programs in this country, whether it's city, state, or federal. Right now, if you look at our infrastructure, we have over $1 trillion we spend on Medicaid and welfare recipients. From food, EBT, housing, over $1 trillion. And so, yes, do these people, most of them, do they come here for economic reasons? Of course they do, yes. Do they qualify for asylum? Then no, they don't qualify for asylum. If you're coming here for economic reasons, you do not qualify for asylum. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. Uh, Number one. Number two, assimilation. Yes, it'd be great. Like the Italians, the Germans, the Irish that came here 100 years ago, they had their cliques in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which I'm sure you're familiar with those areas in New York City. And they all spoke Hebrew and Yiddish, but at the same time, they learned English, and they eventually the second generation spoke English. But we don't really see that with the Hispanic community. We see them now wanting to assimilate, the majority are Hispanics, 80%. The rest are from all parts of the country and the world. But that's a problem. And I interview these migrants that have been here 20 years, and they don't even speak English. And so there's a problem there. Interesting also is I speak to a lot of people that just got their citizenship, um, and did it the right way, did it the legal way. And I asked them, how do you feel about what happened with this big rush during the Joe Joe Biden's administration, and they like, yeah, we support it. So I found that interesting that 77 out of 10 of them that I interviewed that did it the right way still supported people cutting the line and getting ahead of the line. So I see that there's a disconnect somewhere, and I think I like to blame it on the media because the media doesn't really tell the truth on what's really happening. They call all of them asylum seekers, Joe. The problem with that is the math. There are only 3.5 million asylum cases currently today, which is historically backed up. 3.5 million. We only have 700 Department of Justice administration immigration judges, and a small handful of ICE agents that handle that division with the United States Citizen and Immigration Agency. So out of the 20 million that came plus, and I could break down that 20 million if you like, because unfortunately a lot of people don't break down that number of 20 million. They fall in different categories. Out of that 20 plus million the last 5 years, only less than 3 million actually applied for asylum, Joe.
Mm. Yeah. I now when you do your investigations, do you work with ICE, or do they cooperate with you, or have they given you a hard time covering this stuff as well? How has that gone?
I've reached out to ICE and their media division to see if I can go in their convoys and record. Unfortunately, since I'm not backed by a network. I'm not selling you a pillow or a coffee. They don't really respond to me. Plus, my style of journalism, it's a little bit more in your face when it comes to dealing with these Antifa people and these NGOs, which I've documented a lot of these dirty NGOs that have taken billions of our dollars for this invasion, as I call it. Uh, so no, ICE has not reached out to me. I mean, law enforcement here in San Antonio, most of my reporting was done in the interior, not at the border. So I didn't deal with CBP or ICE per se, although I had been at the border several times. My footage is from, okay, they came in, they surrendered themselves. These are the migrants. They surrendered themselves. Now they're at an intake center, a processing welcoming center. What next? What are you going to do next? And that's where I caught these people and interviewed hundreds of these people, to the point where the San Antonio PD did not like what I was doing, and they arrested me. I spent the night in jail for just simply recording in public airports and asking these people questions. I've been nothing but courteous and nice to these people when I interview them, because I want to hear their story, because the American people want to hear their story. They want to know what brought them here, how did they come here, how much money did they spend, were they sexually harassed at the border or raped, these women, the jungles. They went through a jungle for 3 days, for God's sakes. So they traveled 6 countries, and so there's a lot of information that I gathered over the years. But the police department here has been very hostile to me. I sued the city for my arrest of San Antonio, and San Antonio PD was part of the cabal of receiving money. They received over $10 million in in 2 years, because they were the ones that were manning the gates at these centers for these migrants to come in. So, and they were paid by Catholic Charities of San Antonio, the NGOs that are responsible for transporting and moving these people and children around, which we know about the missing hundreds of thousands of children, Joe.
Yeah, that's something that also I think needs to be. It's kind of we've lost our focus on that too. There are a lot of people were talking about that for a long time. That there's what
Mm.
30,000 children that are missing that we don't know where they are, um, or more, and
More.
most likely some of them are most likely they're working in sweatshops or sex trafficking, that kind of thing.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's I mean, it's hard to keep track of all this stuff. We like to think that we live in a surveillance state where there's cameras everywhere and where they can see everything that happens. But, I remember back in the day watching FBI's Most Wanted, and they talked about how I think back then it was like 300 people in America disappeared a year, and you never find them. They're never heard from again. Some of
Mm.
them are kidnapped, some of them are runaways, some of them just disappear from society. Um,
Mm.
but a lot of them are just murdered or die odd deaths, who knows where. I'm wondering if we'll ever find out what happened to all these kids, which by the time we find them, they'll probably be adults if they're not dead or, yeah. What do you think?
Well, when it comes to the unaccompanied alien children, as they call them, the UACs, during the Biden regime, close to 500,000 children came in through the border without any parent or guardian. And so it's hard to imagine if you're an American, you're like, how does a child cross the border by themselves? And that's very complicated business to get into. A lot of them, listen, the vast majority of those 500,000 were 17 16-year-old male boys, the majority, and girls. I would say close to 60%, a little bit less. And they came here for work. Their parents gave them, some money in a bread basket and said, go find your American dream in America. The border is open. Now is your time. So these boys, these young men came here. Yes, they're underage. They're 17, but they came here for work. And a lot of them are right now putting in new roofs in landscape right now. And so when you see these raids at these workplaces with ICE, a lot of these people that are getting caught up into it are or were teenage kids that were unaccompanied. And when they came here unaccompanied, they went into a special camp run by NGOs like Southwest Keys and Compass Connections and Catholic Charities and Jewish services, all these faith-based organizations. So keep that in mind. I would say a good third of them were young men looking for work. The other third were, other members of families that were already here. And so with these illegals that were already here, they paid the cartel money to get their kids over, or they were the ones that were not the gotaways. So they paid $5,000-$10,000 for these children to come with their family so they could be with their parents. So there was a lot of that going on. A reunification of their families, okay? And then you have the other third or so that we're here for, for services, trafficking, human and child trafficking for sexual deviance, because the United States is the number one consumer of this product, of these children, and sex and pornography type of things. So you have to understand, Joe, that when a child comes in through the border, if you're 13 years or younger, 13 years or younger, you do not get photographed, you do not get fingerprinted, you do not. Only 200,000 250,000 or so of the 500,000 actually got any kind of paperwork by ICE when they came in through the border, when they were processed. So in a way, they're ghosts. They're ghosted. Once they walk in, they're ghosted because there is no paper trail for the most part of these children. And yeah, a lot of them were sent to there was one case where it was sent to a gentleman's club, a strip club, but they had mobile homes in the back, and that's where they went, to the mobile homes in the back. A lot of them are missing. A lot of them are dead. A lot of them were harvested their organs in Mexico behind a bar in the alleyway. There was work done, and there's a big business. Your heart, your eyes, your cell, your genes, all that stuff. So that happened a lot in Mexico, and it happens all over the world. But yeah, it's a big mess. So far, Tom Homan and ICE has said that they found tens of thousands of these children, so that's a good sign. But there are tens of thousands that are still missing. Another thing about that is a lot of men that were not teenagers, they were 21, 25 years old. They entered the country saying they were 16 or 17. They lied and they said they were teenagers, they weren't. To get into the country and get in quicker. And then a lot of them are wind up in your high school next to your daughter, that are, sexually harassing your kids because they're not teenagers, they're actually adults. And so there's cases like that as well. So it gets very muddy, it gets very complicated. Hopefully we'll find most of them, but a lot of them will never be found. They're all over the world. And it happened in Ukraine too. Over 100,000 children got lost in Ukraine with the Ukraine-Russian war. Joe.
Yeah, that's Ukraine is another tragic story. I've dedicated a few episodes of the show to that just because I don't think it's a war that should have happened. It's a war that could have been avoided, and so many lives have been lost. And the really sad part is that just like with immigration or other illegal immigration or other forms of things that cause misery to a great extent, people are getting rich off of it. There are people that are making a lot of money off of this. Um, Now I know that I understand that if you self deport, they give you $1,000. Hey, a lot of people that I've talked to don't believe that's actually true because they say you don't get it until you get back to the country. Do you know anything about that? Have you heard any stories? I would love to see reporting on the other end of immigrants that go back to their country and if they actually get the $1,000 and how they establish themselves back in the country.
Well, yes, as I understand how the program works, yeah, you are given a one-way ticket, preferably back to your original national home, and the $1,000 per family does get deposit wire transfer to your bank once you touch soil in your country. I don't have any documentation of that or any interviews of that, but the ICE Homeland Security just put out a report 30 days ago, celebrating the fact that 2 million of these people have already left the country. 1.6 million self-deported. Some of them using the CBP1 app, which is a whole different story. That app, which they used to come into the country. Now they're using it to get out of the country. And then the other 400,000 were, they had their due process with a judge, and they were deemed immediate expedient removal, and they were removed. 400,000. So they're at 2 million in the last 8 months, which is a pretty good tick if those numbers are true.
Yeah, yeah, it's wild. I wonder. Yeah, I'd love to follow. I read an article a few years ago about there's a neighborhood in Mexico City that
Mm.
is pretty much made up of Mexican Americans who they're illegal immigrants, but they were deported, but they basically grew up here. Some of them don't even speak Spanish. But and they live there now, but it's considered like a little USA, and they have pizza and they all dress in American style and listen to American rock and roll
Yeah,
and I wonder if that's going to be the way in a lot of other parts of the world because there are people that are being deported to countries where they were born, but they don't speak the language. They've never actually been there as an adult and they don't have
right.
connections. And how do they make their way? What do you think about that? How do they figure things out? I mean, I'm sure you've been to other countries and it's tricky if you don't know somebody there to find a job, to find a place to live, especially if you don't have, well, they'll have $1,000 coming back, hopefully, but still, yeah.
Right.
What do you think about that?
I think that the town you're talking about in Mexico is Tijuana. There's an area by Tijuana, which is close to La Baja, and California, that you have a community that's they're new refugees of Mexico because they were removed from the United States, and that could have been for people. For the last 30 years, the U.S. border has been a revolving door. I mean, how many times have you seen reports where illegals were sent out and then they came back 2, 3, 4, 5 times to kill and to murder and to rape women? I mean, this happens very often, unfortunately. But thank God now the border is secure for now. Hopefully that revolving door is shut down. You also have DACA. DACA was a program where if these children came in during the 1990s, no fault of their own, their parents brought them in illegally. Now they're in the DACA. There's about 5 million DACA recipients in the country. And in part of the terms and conditions, if you're a DACA uh, person, is if you commit a felony, you get deported right away. You don't get that extension because they have to renew every year and pay about $400 to be a DACA recipient in this country. And so sometimes these guys they get involved with drugs or whatever, and they become felonies. They get deported and they just get sent to Mexico, and that's where your report comes in. How do I feel about them having to go to a country they don't speak the language? I don't really care. They came here speaking no English, and so they had to adopt to our country. Now they need to adopt to another country. I don't really have any problem with that.
Okay. And there's been a lot of attacks on ICE all over, but particularly in your adopted state of Texas. Um, do you
Mm,
think that's going to continue? It seems like the violence, not just against ICE, but against feds in general, is ramping up. Do
mm.
you think that's going to continue? Because it seems like the rhetoric and the stuff they're putting on the news is really making the ICE out to be the bad guys, and people are literally getting on social media and saying, stand up to them, hit them. I would never tell anyone to hit a cop. That's the worst thing you can do. To hit anybody who's got a gun on them, but particularly a cop, it's basically suicide. But you're telling people to go out and commit suicide to attack a cop or kill a Fed. Uh, do you think that's going to ramp up, or do you think that the tensions are eventually going to cool off?
Unfortunately, I think they're going to ramp up. I think we're going to have I saw federal agents that are going to be killed by these people, these radical communist terrorist organizations, which is what Antifa is now, international terrorist organization, which is funded by these nonprofits. These nonprofits, some of them are paid by tax dollars, and I know that because I've done my research here at the local immigrations where you have these these organizations that go and give them water and tell them what their rights are. They do have certain rights. Well, yeah, if the ICE comes to your door, you don't have to answer it kind of rights, you know. And so I've done my research where they get actually paid by U.S. taxpayer money for these organizations. A lot of them are radical. I've been attacked by them. I've been assaulted by them in July of this year. So they know who I am here in San Antonio. Very dangerous crowd. One of them is called the Party of Liberation and Socialism, PSL, and they were responsible for killing those two Jewish workers in D.C. back in March. Murdered two of them. Same party. Organization. They believe in overrunning the country. They want to overtake the country and start a new, revolution. They want revolution, and in order to get that, they're going to attack these ICE officers. I think they're going to ramp up. I think you may even see drones. I think you're going to be able to see them attacking the ICE using drones. They're going to get much more sophisticated, just like what they're doing in Mexico, and they learn a lot from the Mexico cartel because they're working with the Mexican cartel with the drugs and the fentanyl. Uh, when it comes to you seeing these ICE officers doing their investigation and actually arresting people in public, they're not just taking everyone off the streets. They're targeting these people. These people are not answering the door. So what happens is they can't get them at the jail because the sanctuary cities do not do detainments with ICE and holds them at a safe jail. They let them loose into the streets. They can't get them at the house. So what they have to do is wait outside, then follow them to a shopping mall or at a red light, and then go in and make the arrest. And that's what you're seeing now. And yeah, and yeah, the public needs to understand that uh, this is very important. That there are over 1.4 million illegal aliens in this country that were given their due process, and they were ordered removed. They were given final removal orders, Joe, in the last 20 years. And I've seen them. I've interviewed these people that did not leave because there was no interior enforcement for the most part. If you look historically, the last 10 years, it's at 150, 200,000 people that were actually removed from the interior. There are only 6,000 ICE officers that did that in the whole country. 6,000, that's it. So what we're seeing is a backlog of people that were told, get out of my country. You're here illegally, including visa holders, not just people that walk through the border, visa holders as well. They make up actually the majority, which is 43%, well, not the majority, but 45% of these people that should not be in our country here, they're from expired visas. So when you see in the streets are people that they've gotten their due process, they were told to leave, they didn't leave. So we got to take the initiative and get them out forcefully. So that's what we're seeing in the streets, and it's important that the public knows that.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how the local governments are kind of standing up against the federal government to a certain extent in Chicago,
Mm.
in Los Angeles, um, and there was a situation recently in Chicago where ICE was run off the road by some uh, some non-citizens that
Mm.
uh, and
Yeah.
and there was gunfire, and they called for backup, and then the police, there's some dispute about it, but the recording from the dispatcher shows that they basically were told not to do anything, just to hang tight, that
No,
stay in the area. Um,
right.
so, I mean, ultimately, do you think this could end up in some sort of civil war between the local governments and the federal government?
Well, that's what the Democratic Party wants because the Democratic Party has the lowest approval rating ever. So they have to escalate things, just like what happened in 2020 during COVID with George Foreman. This is George Foreman 2.0, except it's not a black man. It's actually a Hispanic man. It's the same
George
playbook.
Floyd. Yeah,
George
sorry.
Floyd.
Yeah.
Yeah, excuse me.
George Foreman is the boxer.
George Floyd. Yes, and
Yeah,
the entity that actually killed Floyd
yeah.
was China. And China. And not to get off topic here, but my geopolitical stance on who killed George Floyd was China. Why do I say that? Because what was George doing? George was a black man in Middle America without a job. Why? Because the jobs were exported to Mexico and other parts of the world, China including. He had no job basically. He was a drug user, fentanyl, another product that is brought in from China and cooked in Mexico and brought in through the southern border, another Chinese product. And the third thing, he was at a convenience store trying to buy a product with counterfeit money, counterfeit U.S. money. And as you know, China does everything counterfeit American product. And so that was a counterfeit Chinese dollar that he was trying to push off. And so who killed George? It was China that killed George. So that's my 2 cents on that one. Uh, but getting back to the border, uh, yeah, these sanctuary cities, which by the way, it's interesting how they came up with the word sanctuary, which is a religious term. I thought the left was against state and religion, separation. Uh, the history of sanctuary cities is very interesting. During the 90s and the early 2000s, when there wasn't a lot of funding for ICE. By the way, ICE came after 2001, after the 9/11 attacks. Immigration Naturalization Services (INS) was put into Homeland Security with all these other agencies, and that's when they formed ICE. But prior to that, there was very little enforcement with picking up illegals at the local jails, city and states, to the point where certain cities were very more soft. And they just started coining the term sanctuary because there was no federal enforcement. And that's the federal problem. That was the federal issue. They caused the problem. The federal government caused the problem by not having enough boots on the ground. And so slowly but surely, it blossomed into this, what we're seeing now, which is local law enforcement not cooperating with federal agents, which is they're responsible to work together, Joe.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the amount of fentanyl has gone down a lot since the border's been closed. Hopefully, that issue might. I don't think it's ever going to be resolved. Just like cocaine, there's still going to be some coming in. America is a huge consumer of drugs, so but a lot of people don't talk about the amount. I mean, really, the amount of people who overdosed and committed suicide during COVID and after COVID was more than people who died from COVID. Um,
Mm,
and it's really that's a national emergency. If eh, but they don't do anything about it.
mm,
I mean, there are harsh penalties now for fentanyl for drug dealers, but
mm.
ultimately it usually ends up with the guy on the street and not the guy the up top who's actually distributing it. Um, do you think that that's gonna, because we're also we've started supposedly a war on the cartels in Mexico. I don't know how that's going. I know that we are doing some stuff down in Venezuela. In the ocean, we have some ships that have been sinking, the speedboats that are transporting drugs. Um, do you think that this is just more of the quote unquote war on drugs that didn't really get anywhere and ended up putting more drugs in our community? Or do you think that it's actually going to have an impact?
That's a good question. I mean, if you look at the what we're seeing with these mules that are being used, these are the ones that are gotaways. These 2 to 3 million gotaways. A lot of them were transporting marijuana and fentanyl and cocaine. Yeah, he's definitely put a stop to it, not completely, and the cartel is definitely feeling it. the Mexican cartel, and the Mexican cartel just did a drone attack with grenades at a federal building in Mexico 2 or 3 days ago, over by Tijuana, which is an area very heavily residents of American expats. So I found that interesting. Uh, I think we're always going to have drugs coming in, and there's always going to be seepage because there's such high demand. These cartels are very uh, creative on how to get it into the country. They're very creative. Uh, so I don't think the flow of drugs will ever stop 100%. I would like to see the country move away from drugs. I don't, and that's why I don't really support legalizing marijuana in a lot of these states like Colorado and California, et cetera, et cetera. I think it sends the wrong message to the young. So I've always been against that. And so we have a cultural problem, and people always say, make America great again. It's hard to make America great again if you're not godly again. And I'm not here to, push any type of religion, but we lost our way in the last 40 years, 30 years, no doubt about that. And hopefully we can, you know, figure that out soon. So yeah, this whole use of drugs is very problematic. You can smoke a joint in New York City legally. I did that because I was at one of these ICE detention camps in New York City, and I'm filming, and there was an illegal to my left, and there was a police officer to my right, and the illegal was looking at me, calling me names, in Spanish, puta, madre de puta, all that shit, and then while he's cursing me out, and I have it on film, he's rolling up a joint, and I'm like, you're rolling up a joint? And I have not lived in New York in 10 years. And I said, that's illegal. And he goes, I said, listen, that's illegal. You can't do that. And he was smoking it. I said, as I turned to the right, I said, officer, this guy has a marijuana. He's smoking it. And the officer says, yeah, it's perfectly legal now. So this is the world we live in. It's crazy, Joe.
Yeah, it's legal in LA now too, and basically, I I don't have a problem with people smoking it so much, but it is everywhere. It's on the street, and the smell is very strong everywhere, and that's a bit much. And it has changed our society to a certain extent. I think that one thing that I really found when I was young is that it takes away your motivation. And a lot of young people don't have motivation to do much in life these days, and part of it is it all seems so hopeless. There aren't enough jobs. It's almost impossible for a young couple to buy a house these days because they cost upwards of $1 million, at least in California or in most major cities.
Mhm.
Um,
Right.
how do you think that? Well, actually, before I get to that, I wanted to ask you about Doge. Because Doge actually
Mhm.
shut down U.S. aid, which was giving a lot of the money to these NGOs. Has that affected things in terms of the support that people are getting on the street from these NGOs, or is it still kind of slowly trickling the money that they were getting from the federal government or from the taxpayers?
Okay. Well, getting back to the price of houses and inflation, the answer to that is Bitcoin. I'm a strong supporter of Bitcoin. I own Bitcoin. It is a decentralized currency, digital gold, and so that is the future. And I know you support it as well because I seen your timeline. So thank God that God created Bitcoin and not those other shit coins. Bitcoin. There is no second best to Bitcoin. It is the future, and the future is here. So you need to get with the program because if you don't own it and save in Bitcoin, spend in dollars, but save in Bitcoin, it will be your lifesaver in the next 5 to 10 years. That's my opinion on that. And in terms of Doge was able to find waste, fraud, and abuse. Uh, they didn't reach what their goal was, which was 1 trillion, 2 trillion. I think they reached maybe $500 billion, which is a lot of money, 500 billion, somewhere around there. 70,000 federal agencies employees were early retired or quit or got fired. 70,000 out of 3 million, not a lot, but it's a start. Uh, Doge in terms of affecting the immigration with these NGOs. That was a whole interesting campaign. It was, uh, and guess who funded it? It was the Democratic and the Republican Party that funded the invasion of our country through these non-government organizations, which basically they do the dirty work for the federal government. That's what they do. They do the dirty work for the government. And so Most of that funding came through funding that was approved by Congress through FEMA. FEMA was the funnel they used to give these companies, these NGOs, billions of dollars to feed, transport, and clothe these people that came into our country. Most of them have been shut down. The funding through FEMA, which is supposed to be for American citizens, not illegals, has been shut down. You still have some NGOs operating for the children camps. At the height, there were about 12,000 children in any given day holding at these camps, all separated by sex and by age. You know, they didn't put the girls with the boys for the most part. They're still operating. Their numbers went down from 12,000 children to 3,000 children. So there are still children that are still being held in these camps today. There are about 300 camps along the southern border. 55% of them are in Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley area, which is McAllen area. And for the most part, a lot of these children are going to be put into foster camps, foster care. And that's what these NGOs do. Catholic Charities has been doing fostering since the 1960s. So that's what I'm seeing in the NGO front. And I've exposed them. I've helped expose them. I've been to their headquarters asking where are the billions of dollars, where are the children? And I've been thrown out of there. I've been, trespassing with these NGOs. And I hope they face some type of I hope they face Congress for their accountabilities, because a lot of them didn't do a good job, and it was it's such a slush. The slush of money that went to these NGOs is disgusting. Majority, I investigated one NGO, Southwest Keys, and the last tax returns I saw, close to 70% of them, the funding that they got from federal government, close to 70% went to their employees' salaries and bonuses. And so that's what I gotta say, Joe.
Yeah, it seems that so many of these so-called charities are slush funds in a way. There's, I'm sure you've heard about the billions that have gone into fixing the homeless problem in California, and the quote unquote statistics that are coming out are that the numbers of homeless are going down. But I work in downtown LA, and if you see it on the street, they're not going down. It seems like there are more and more homeless people every day, and they're getting out to the suburbs as well. They're not just locked into the cities anymore, but the executives who run these programs make millions of dollars, and or at least 500,000, $800,000 a year,
Right.
much more than the average person. And the problem's not getting fixed. I wonder, the media is still pretty much on the other side of things, and but traditional media is also dying out, because basically most people don't get their information. Most people don't watch regular TV anymore. It's mostly older people that do that. Once that generation dies off, which I don't like to think about because I have relatives and loved ones in that generation, but do you think that networks like ABC, CBS, NBC are going to be able to keep going? I mean, their viewership is nothing like it was 20, 30 years ago. I mean, now podcasts on the internet get more views than nightly news or even talk shows, like late night talk shows, which are still making millions of dollars. The guys who are on them, and they employ hundreds of people, but how long can they justify that when they're not getting the return on investment anymore?
Right. That's good question. It's true. We know when it comes to the legacy media, um, they're still powerful, even though their viewership is down. Um, they still have a big horn. Um, Now, the younger generation are moving from cable TV to TikTok. Now, I don't know if that's better, because if you're telling me you're getting your news from a 5-second or 10-second clip of some type of biased clip, and that's why you see these people attacking these ICE officers in the streets, because what they're giving the news is so misleading and so full of lies that they're Gestapo kidnapping people. No, these are people that have been specifically targeted for arrests, that have been given removal orders, and they did not leave. And I don't care if you're a mom taking your kid to school, or if you're illegal alien, or a man raping women, or selling drugs or weapons. There is no difference. You should not be here. You should not be here. With the media, I put them responsible. Telemundo, Univision, uh, these Latino stations, they're the worst. They don't report what's really happening. And so, yeah, I put a lot of I point my finger to the media and to higher education universities. They're the ones that are brainwashed these people. These people are in a cult. And the truth is, the facts don't lie. I mean, you look at the data doesn't lie, but they're not giving the data. And it's not even these liberals, it's conservative media. When I post something on my Twitter account, on my X account, of these people leaving an ICE check-in center with an extension on their parole, which means they just been paroled. They haven't even seen a judge to get paroled. They were brought into the country illegally. They surrendered themselves to the Border Patrol. ICE did the processing, gave them a notice to appear, an NTA, from 1 year. I seen it up to 8 years, future date, to see an ICE officer to check in. And then they get extensions. 7 out of 10 of these people coming out of immigration courts are getting extensions for another year, 2 years. It's not like they're all getting arrested. They're not. That's why I told you 30% are never going to get arrested, and they're never going to leave. So this is a problem, and it's very complicated. Like you said in the beginning of the broadcast here, immigration is very layered. There are different programs for different countries. It depends on what year you came in. It depends on if you have a child, or if you're higher education or not. There are so many layers to this immigration. Um, if you're from Cuba, you get special privileges than if you were from, Colombia or something. So, getting back to the media, yeah, the media. I have a problem if it's going from CNN to TikTok, which a lot of kids are getting their information from TikTok, and that's no better. That's even worse, Joe.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Now, do you still have a lot of family in Colombia?
I've got some indigenous family living in the mountains with cows and donkeys, living in a hut, and I've been there. I visit them.
Hmm. Yeah, and do you have a lot of relatives here in the United States?
Yes, I am a product of 7 brothers and sisters, all liberal Democrats except me.
I was
I'm the
gonna
only
ask you
conservative.
what does your family think about your reporting?
They've uh, they've isolated me. They don't talk to me for the most part.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, it happens. I'm against that. I'm against turning against your blood because of political views, because ultimately family and friends is all you have in this world, and it's crazy. None of us is in charge. I get into arguments. I don't get into arguments with acquaintances and distant relatives anymore, because it's not worth it. You're not going to get anywhere with them, and I don't feel that it should uh, change my relationship with them. It's somebody that you knew since you were a child. All of a sudden, and they always knew you to be a good person. All of a sudden, because you believe one thing that they don't believe, they see you in a completely different way, and I think that's terribly sad. It reminds me, there are a lot of parallels right now to the 1930s. The 1930s, the Depression. That's when things really built up to World War II, and the left and the right were going at it, and people were killing each other in the streets. I was born in Spain, and in Spain, there was a civil war, and they're still kind of traumatized by that, even though the younger generation doesn't even really remember Franco's time, which went for 40 years. I was born during Franco's time, but uh, it tore the country apart, which is civil war will do, and that's what I'm afraid is going to happen these days, because the same kind of thing, the same problems we're having, they're having in Europe too. They're parallel, they're a little different. In Europe, the immigrants are mostly from North Africa and from the Middle East,
Mhm.
which brings another layer to it, because they're Muslims, and they have a completely different belief system than the European Christians, and they they don't want to adapt, and they want to. It seems like they want to take over, and they are taking over in a lot of areas. Um, Here, at least, I mean, whether you're Mexican, Colombian, Nicaraguan, whatever, you're most likely Christian. You most likely have similar values to that, and you don't want to kill someone because they're not your religion necessarily. You might not agree with them, but that we're. It seems like in some areas we're on the brink of a civil war. In other areas, in other parts of the world, they're on the brink of a religious war, like the Holy Wars, going back to the Crusades and all that.
Mm.
It's a really wild time. Are
Right.
you optimistic for the future? Do you think that things are going to get better?
You know, I think about that often, where we're heading as a country when I see what's happening in the streets of America. I never thought I'd see this ever. It started with, in 2020 with Black Lives Matter. And these communist organizations trying to infiltrate our country. Uh, the difference is that there are 300 million weapons in our country, 300 million guns in homes across our country. No other country has that. We have the Constitution, we have the Bill of Rights. That's what makes us unique than any other country, including Europe and Spain. Um, the left, they want revolution. That's what they want. They want Trump to bring in the National Guard and bring in the Marines to every city in our country that is a sanctuary city that's harboring illegals. They want that. They want that fight because they believe they're going to win with that in 2026 and 2028 during election. Um, my thoughts on that, I think that I think this will pass. I don't think we're going to go into revolution. I hope not. Uh, I think there may be some type of incident that happens that really wakes up the American people so that bring calm heads to what's happening. Um, the left always saying that these I'm sorry, the illegal aliens here, they are Christian. They come from Christian countries. And if you ask them, do you support gay marriage? No. Do you support transvestites? These teenage mutilating their bodies to become transvestites? No. They don't like that social issues. That they're very conservative, and so I find that interesting that the Antifa wants to support and help these people when they don't believe in anything that Antifa believes in. Uh, but yeah, when it comes to revolution, I hope we don't get there, Joe. That would not be a good thing for the country. And President Trump is is a man of peace. You see what's happening all over the world. Israel's getting a little hairy with Hamas, and I think that was a setup. Israel's going to take over Hamas in the Gaza Strip area. That's the goal. And believe it or not, they're going to actually name a certain part of that Gaza Strip area, the waterfront property part, which is beautiful property waterfront. It's going to be named after Trump. It's going to have Trump Boulevard, Trump everything. It's going to probably have even a golf course, 18 golf course. It's going to happen. This is what Israel does. This is what the Jewish people do. And I love my Jewish people. Don't get me wrong. I support the Jewish people. Is the Israeli
You
state.
can't be a New Yorker and not love Jewish people. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, I mean, but there's some things that I'm concerned about Netanyahu, what he's doing. But if you think about it, not to get off topic, but the Jewish people are the best in real estate. I know because I've done real estate for 25 years in New York.
mhm,
They are geniuses when it comes to real estate. They know what they're doing when it comes to real estate. And
mhm,
so Israel wants to expand. They already started in the north. They're going to start with the south area of Israel, and they know how to use the land the best. What has Gaza's what has the Gaza Strip done in 30 years since they've been refugees? And that's what they are. They're refugees. There's no Palestinian government, sovereign state. They've been used as pawns for 30 to 40 years. These refugees have betted themselves ever since Arafat. Remember Arafat? They're pawns. But Israel is going to take over that area. That's my prediction. Um,
yeah.
and so yeah.
And I know that in terms of communist terrorists, there were communist terrorists in Colombia, the FARC, right? They were pretty
Yeah.
much, and it seems like a lot of the violence that's going on now with Antifa, and even like the shooting of Charlie Kirk, uh, um,
Yeah.
is terrorism. It's a form of terrorism, and I
Mm.
wonder where that's going to go in terms of ultimately, um the society was against, when I was a kid in the 70s and 80s, uh, terrorism was always considered a bad thing. I mean, I'm Irish American. I'm also Jewish, for to be completely open, and I lived in Israel for a year. But uh, terrorism was always seen to be a bad thing. My family's Irish, but we weren't really for the IRA because they would blow up women and children and that kind of thing. Even though we believed in the struggle against England because it was, it wasn't right and it wasn't fair the way they treated the Irish. And the Irish are doing better now. They had a boom with the tech boom, and then it kind of died out like it has in a lot of places. But Apple is still over there and provides, I think, some jobs. And they're there because they don't have to pay taxes, But I don't know how much is going to be repatriated like it is from China. We're moving. That's one thing. Do you think the economy is going to get better soon? I mean, it's kind of, it seems to be kind of flatlining. It's not. We're not in a depression like they a lot of people predicted that after the tariffs that everything was going to fall apart. Prices are through the roof, but I don't know that it's necessarily related to the tariffs. But everything is super expensive now. You
Right.
you go to fast food is like 10, $15 or $20, which is insane. What's the point? The whole point of fast food was that it was cheap, and it's not. Nothing's cheap anymore. So
Or
what
fat.
do you? Or fast, yeah. Well, do you think that we're going to get more jobs here and more prosperity in the future?
That's a good question. In terms of the economy, I'm a believer of low taxes and less regulations, and Donald Trump has lowered taxes on all tax brackets, and lowered regulations, and to get us out of this stagnation we're in. We're kind of stagnated here, where we need to produce more energy, and that's oil and gas and fracking, especially with the AI revolution that's coming. That's going to be huge. I think AI is a game changer, and I think if we use it properly, it can really take us to the next level and make it the ages of the gold, like Donald Trump says, President Trump says. Um, but first, we got to fight. We got to beat the communists, and for that, we need 2 or 3 terms like a Donald Trump, with J.D. Vance, or maybe a Trump son like Donald Trump, or someone in that manner. Maybe even Barron Trump in 20 years. Who knows? Um, but that fight has needs to be won. Capitalism is the only way to get out, to raise every bracket, even the poor. Capitalism works if it's done right. Problem is, it hasn't been done right for almost 100 years. We've had crony capitalism with big corporations like Amazon squashing the little guys. That's a problem because Amazon has donates a lot of money to these politicians. But in looking at it from a 30,000 foot, I think we're going to do well. I think I think the future is bright. But the understand inflation. We're never going to go back to the old prices. When inflation happens, you don't go back to the old prices from pre-COVID. Those prices are gone. You'll never see them again. So what you'll see is, hopefully the Federal lower interest rates, which is critical, uh, but not to zero. They should never have been to zero. But we need to see the American people's wages go up. That has to go up as well to match the inflation that we've had the last 5 years, which everyone's feeling, including me, right? So yeah, but I do think the future is bright because we are a nation that has a covenant with God, and only 1 or 2 nations have that. The other one being Israel. Uh, Jewish people have a covenant with God. But we need to turn to God, and I think we have especially since Charlie Kirk's assassination. We are a Judeo-Christian society, and God favors us. But we need to first bless God first before we get blessed. So even though there are a lot of uh, if you look at the census, a lot of people are turning to paganism, and they're not religious. They don't believe in God. That's a problem because of the universities. That's the fastest growing religion is paganism, and non-believers. But hopefully we could turn that around. We're still 80% Judeo-Christian society today, Joe.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you so much, Hernando. Where can folks find you on social media? and follow you?
Well, yes, I'm exclusively only on X and Rumble because they're the only platforms that do not censor. X and Rumble. Hernando Arce. Follow me. Like, share, and comment. And also, I have a donation page there on my profile. I don't get paid a salary for this. I do this between work, my job. I have a full-time job, and I do this on my day off. I have over 1,000 videos uh, of my videos of immigration because the left always tries to rewrite history. And that's why I have all my videos backed up in hard drives and multiple clouds because they're going to try to rewrite what happened during the Biden administration with these migrants. And my videos don't lie; they tell the truth. So thank you for having me, Joe.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And to all our listeners, thank you. And until next time.